320th Engineer Battalion.
Can you tell me the highest rank you achieved?
PFC.
And what was your MOS? What did you do in the Army?
I was, well, several things. A forward scout. I was with the engineers. We were part of the infantry, and we made it so that wherever the infantry couldn't get through, we made it possible for them to proceed. Whether it was crossing bridges, they had to put up a pontoon bridge. Whether it was going through a forest so they wouldn't see us, we would cut down the trees and make a road through the forest. We had to advance through the streets in a house or whatever it is. We couldn't walk up the streets. We would blow a hole in a house or the building, go through the building and out the alley and cross over instead of going up. Those are part of our duties.
Were you drafted or did you enlist?
I was going to be drafted, but I was in college at the time, and I volunteered enlistment before I was being drafted, so I thought I would get a choice of where I would go into the Army. I was going to engineering school at Northeastern University for engineering, and so they put me into the combat engineer outfit. That's how I got in the engineer outfit, because I was training to be an engineer.
Now you say you went to Northeastern. Were you living in Boston at the time?
No, I was in Springfield, Massachusetts.
And why did you join? Why did you enlist?
Because I thought I would get preference to where I would be assigned to.
So you knew you were going to get drafted, but
yes.
Okay. And why did you pick the Army as opposed to the Marines?
Good question. I really don't know why. I could have joined the Navy, I think, but I don't know why the Army just seemed to be the route to go at the time.
Can you recall the first days when you enlisted and any of that memory when you enlisted?
Yeah, that was March 18th. I went down to the Army's office there, and I got sworn in as a member of the Army, and they gave me 1 week to get ready to go away. And March 18th and I think the 23rd of March, I went to the railroad station with a bunch of guys, and they took us to Fort Devens, Massachusetts, where that was the center for all the guys going into the service.
How did you feel about when you went in? Did you have any reservations? When you enlisted, did you have any reservations? Or?
No. I was a young kid. I was 19. Who not a care in the world. What's the worry? And I oblivious to what really was going on. I guess I didn't really have the depth, the understanding of it. I went in and had a tour.
How many years were you a freshman at Northeastern? Or?
Yes.
And did you go to basic training at Fort Devens, or where did you go?
No, from Fort Devens, we were there for several days. In Fort Devens, we took a train to Fort Leonard Wood, Missouri, because Fort Leonard Wood, Missouri is a engineer basic training post.
As it is still today.
It is today. Yes, I understand it. And it was in the middle of no place.
As it is still today.
Let me tell you. You ever there?
No, I went to basic training in Alabama.
Oh. In Fort Leonard Wood, Missouri, the mountains, it was just far from, nothing was near there.
Get your mindset on Army training.
Yeah.
Can you remember any of your drill instructors? Any memories from basic training you'd like to talk about?
Basic training, all I remember is that it was walking up mountains and down mountains and digging trenches in that hard soil, getting up early in the morning and for 13 weeks we did that.
I'm gonna jump back a little bit. When you enlisted, how was it for your mom and dad or your parents? How was it at the house?
Well, they were very concerned, they were worried, but they felt that as Americans, because they came from Europe, they into here, they came many, many, many years ago, and they felt as a good American, this was your duty to go.
Did you have any brothers or sisters?
Yes, I had two older sisters, and I have a younger brother. My younger brother did go into the Navy, and that, I think, hurt them more than when I went away.
Was he the youngest of the family?
Yes.
Of course, yeah.
He was the youngest. I think he was only 17 or 18, just out of high school.
Sure.
When he went into the Navy.
So how many weeks were you at Fort Longwood?
We were there 13 weeks was the length of the training for basic training, where they taught whatever you had to do in there.
Sure.
And then while I was there, they just opened up what they call the ASTP. It was a college course that if you went there for 9 months, you would come out a lieutenant. I enlisted in that, and I qualified for it. And after basic training, when I was accepted, I went to the University of Nebraska. At the University of Nebraska, I was there probably about 2 weeks, where they were trying to find out where I would fit in, what I would do, and where I would go. And then after the 2 week stay at the University of Nebraska, that was in Lincoln, I remember, they sent me to PMC, Pennsylvania Military College. That was in Chester, Pennsylvania, which is right outside of Philadelphia.
Okay.
And it was a military college. The Colonel French was his name. He was in head of the school, strict taskmaster. Oh, he instilled the fear of everyone, of him and everybody. But we went there. It was a 9 months course. And when we graduated, and just before we were graduating, D-Day came up, and they cut the class short because they were going to get ready to send us overseas, which meant they didn't give everybody that second lieutenant commission. They cut it short. We had the graduation, and shortly after that, when graduated, we went to Pennsylvania, Indiantown Gap.
That's in Pennsylvania as well.
That's in Pennsylvania, Indiantown Gap. We were there a while, doing some training, getting ready to go overseas. And for a while there, because we didn't know whether we would go to Italy or where we were going, so they wanted to train for everything. So they sent me to a mule packing school. They taught us how to pack mules because cars or vehicles could not go up the mountains in Italy.
Sure.
So we had to pack the school. And we were there for 4 weeks. The nights were freezing and the days were hot. Inside we stayed in these little pup tents that they had.
Absolutely.
And in the morning, that dew inside the tent would be so wet from condensation, if you touch it, you really got soaking wet from it. And but we had the mules, and we walked, and we packed them up with big boxes, big crates. Poor mules were walking around, and up the mountains and down the mountains, getting all that. And we were there for about 4 weeks.
Now, had D-Day happened when you were at Indiantown Gap?
D-Day, no, Indiantown Gap. I'm trying to remember the dates. I don't think it quite happened yet. Let me see. March. I finished school in March.
This is 1944.
44. And from March of 44, like I say, we went to Indiantown Gap. Then I went to West Virginia. And we stayed in Indiantown Gap for a while. Then we went to ready to ship out. We went to the Boston Harbor. They shipped out from the Boston Harbor. We went by boat to England.
And how many days were on a transport ship?
Oh, that transport ship took us about 10 days. It was an awful long ride because it was zigzagging through the ocean so we wouldn't get hit by the German
U-boats.
U-boat, right. And we landed on the east coast of England in, what's that big city?
Southampton?
No, on the west coast of England, rather.
Liverpool?
Was it Liverpool? On the west coast of England? I can't think of. And anyway, from there we took a train, and it took several days to go down to Southampton, which is right on the English Channel.
Sure.
We stayed there for about a week, getting ready to go, and D-Day had happened already, and by that time we crossed the Channel and landed in France.
Did you land at Normandy?
Omaha, I think it was. I think it was the Omaha beachhead we came in at. And then we land, of course, they had already forced the Germans back, so it was relatively easy to land without too much of a danger of getting shot at or blown up with cannons. And from there, we traveled by truck. We drove in a truck, I remember, a big truck, for a while. And, oh, wow. So long ago, it's getting to be.
Sure. Yeah, I understand. I want to go back, and you had mentioned that you were in at Indian Town Gap, and you could have been commissioned. Is that correct? Is that how I understood that?
Yes.
How did you feel about not getting commissioned?
Well, it was a little disappointing because this was a goal that they kept enticing us for. This is what's going to happen, and whether they probably didn't know that D-Day would be at the time the program started. I have a emblem and a hat for that. But when our program started, they felt that, or they didn't really realize when D-Day would be. So this was the program. You went 9 months with intensive training in engineering, the math, the physics, the chemistry, everything that went to go along with whatever it took to be an engineer. And just before graduation is when the orders came down that they were canceling. At the end of the 9-month semester, it was over, but they weren't going to give anybody. So they were pretty upset, the whole group. There were several hundred of us at that school.
And were they different MOSs, or were they all engineers?
Engineers, just engineers, yeah.
I would be upset too.
Yeah.
I feel your frustration. So when you got to England, did you conduct any training while you were in England? How long were you in England for?
Well, like I say, we landed and took maybe several days traveling in that train. Oh, I remember that train. It was warm. The windows were open, and that soot was coming in from the coal that was powering these trains. And it took several days to cross through. It was a beautiful countryside. The views were beautiful, but which reminded me of the countryside. When we went to left Fort Devens, if I can go back, if we went to Fort Devens, we went by train to Fort Leonard Wood, Missouri, and every so often, this was a troop train, the train would have to stop, go off the side to let the regular train go through, and then we would come back onto the track. And I remember I was a little over 19 years old, and we stopped at a city. I don't remember the city, but we stopped at the city, and we get off the train, and all the guys, some were older than I, they had to go into a bar. I went along with them into the bar, and the first time I really drank beer at a bar. I drank a beer, I don't remember how many beers I had, But then we had to get back on a train, and all of a sudden, my gosh, did I get sick from that? And I was ready to, I don't know whether I was going to throw up or go blind or what. Oh, was I sick. So I remember I walked off to the back of the platform of the train, and I was ready to chuck it all up when I said, oh, I better not stand up. So I lay down. I was laying flat on a train with my head off the edge, the back of the train, and wow, going along. That was my first experience with, I wasn't really drunk. It was just, I don't know what it was, but at any rate, that was one of the experiences that really stuck out in my mind on that trip.
Sure. How long was your boat ride across the channel?
That wasn't too long. I don't recall exactly how long it was, but it wasn't too long. Maybe the day of whatever it was.
Now, was your whole battalion on one ship, or was it broken up? Were there many ships?
Yeah.
Were you just were some of your soldiers already over in France?
From my division?
Yes.
Yeah, they went in sections because the boat can't hold everybody in it. So I don't know if I was the first or the last, but from Southampton, where we were staying there, I know that they were leaving before us in groups. Were departing to go through the channel. And then when I left, I know there was groups behind me still left over. So with my company, we went as a group, and we went at that time.
When you got onto France, when you got onto French soil, were you told what your specific duties were going to be at that time?
No, we didn't get any orders yet. We drove for a while, then we stopped and we stayed there for a couple of days. And then by that time, the front line had advanced quite a bit into France. When they passed Paris, Paris was declared an open and free city, which meant there was no fighting there, there was no bombing, no shelling, nothing was allowed there. So we went around it, and they preserved Paris at the time. And we went a little past Paris, and the little country then, I don't know if it exists now, Alsace-Lorraine, I remember. The small little country was right outside of France and between Germany and there. And that's where the troops were fighting. The front line was there. We were assigned to bring supplies from the ships that landed at the Channel of France to the front lines. So we each had a truck. We had a 2.5 ton truck, I remember we drove. And and this was all at night. We'd fill up the truck. I didn't fill up, but the truck was filled up by the other guys with supplies, whatever it was, food, ammunition, whatever it is. They filled our big truck up, and then we would drive it to the front line, but we would drive at night. No headlights, no light. We'd have to follow the truck in front of us, because the truck in front of us, the back had 2 little slits of red lights.
Sure, yep.
So they wouldn't shine and they couldn't be picked up or anything, and you had to watch that. And we had our gun by our side, and a steel helmet on, and the door was open on the side, and we were riding along. And I remember one time I'm riding, and I hit a big bump in the road, and I hit my head, and my helmet went right outside. I had no helmet for a while till I got back to camp, and then I got another one. But we drove supplies for several weeks. All night long we would drive it. And it was 400 or 500 miles that they had already advanced by that time. And we just...
advanced from Paris or from?
From the coast, from
Okay.
Normandy, all the beachheads.
Okay.
They gone way past Paris. They drove the German way back there. And then finally, after we drove the trucks and brought the supplies, excuse me, up, then we went in to do our work, which we were assigned to do. We had our missions. Our missions was to make sure that wherever the Army had to go through, that they were able to go through on the front lines. Whether it was, if there was a little river or something and they couldn't cross the river and it was small enough, we put up a pontoon bridge. We slide the bridges out on pontoons, and in sections, Bailey bridges, they called them at that time. And in sections, they would just put them out, and then hook another one and push that one out until it reached the other side of the bank, so the Army and trucks could pass over on these bridges. If they had to be rowed across on a boat, with a little boat, because it was a small creek, we would put 10, 12 guys in a little boat, row them across, get them over there, come back and take another group of kids. If we hit a forest and we couldn't get on any open roads because they would be seen by the aircraft or wherever they could see us, so we would go through the forest. So for the trucks to go through the forest, we had to cut down the trees, we had to really cut it way down, and we lay a mat, I remember a steel mat, like a mesh mat on there, so the trucks could, and the infantry could walk through to keep on going. It was then, if we were with the infantry all the time, and like I say, if they weren't able to get through because some obstacle in a way, we would make it possible. When we would get into a city and you'd walk down the street naturally, but you couldn't at the time because the Germans were at the other end of the road, and if they see you pop your head out, boom, you're dead. In fact, a very, very close friend of mine that I became very friendly with in the Army there, we were together, and we were in this one town where we were trying to get up the street. We couldn't, so we were in the side of a house. And he stuck his head out to see where, if it was clear or not, and bam, all of a sudden his head just blew up in front of me. Oh, that was a devastating thing to see that happen, you know.
Sure. Did you go through basic training and everything with this?
Yes.
So
he came from Pennsylvania. Kulak, Peter Kulak was his name. I remember when we first went into service. When we went into the front lines, we were walking through there, and there in the bushes, I saw a GI laying there with his stomach hanging out. That was the first sign I ever saw of a dead, or really somebody that was so mutilated. Wow, I was sick over that for a while, but I had to get over that quick. But that was my first experience with seeing a dead body. After that, not that it didn't bother me, but it was shame to see all these guys laying there dead in the bushes along the side of the road because they haven't had a chance to pick them up and clear them away. And that's what happened there. Then if we couldn't walk up the street, because we always carried with us as a bandolier, call it, with dynamite and cord.
The long tube.
And the cord, the wire, so you could put in a dynamite, go off to the side, and then blow it up. And we always carried that with us. And that was part of our, you live with that. I don't remember the timetable, but we were doing this for quite a while. And in December, sometime early part of December, incidentally, the 95th Division had the reputation, made famous, the Metz, city of Metz. They were the ones that freed Metz, because Metz was a very stronghold of the Germans, and they defended that city with everything they had practically. And the 95th Division went in and conquered that, opened up that city, because that was a bastion for the Germans. They really held American troops back. You couldn't go back, and that was like a vital.
Right now, there was a nickname given for the Mets. What do you recall what that was? I recall reading about that. Memory doesn't serve me. But there was a nickname given to the division for liberating Mets, and I think maybe it might have been the Miracle Mets. I don't recall.
Yeah, there was one, and I can't. But they got high honors and they got recognition galore for the 95th Division for freeing the city of Metz. And then we went on doing the same things over and over again. And then in beginning of, and we were assigned also, the Germans had these bunkers built in the side of the hills. They dug into the hill and put a concrete wall there, must have been about 2.5 feet thick, and little slits there where they would sit there. The Germans would sit in these bunkers and watch anybody coming by. They would just boom, boom, boom. So we were assigned to knock out these bunkers. So somehow we would have to go around the side, however it is, and with our backpack of the explosives, if we got there, we would put it at the back door of the entrance to this bunker and set off this big, huge dynamite blast, because we couldn't get in, but the concussion of the blast would kill everybody inside that room. Right. Where they were staying. And this was part of our big job, was to get there. And then we went in, and this one time we had to go, and we got a lot of dynamite with a lot of stuff with us, and we were in Ensdorf, Germany. I'll never forget that. We had to cross a big open field because the bunker where the Germans were shooting were up at the top, and we were in the bottom, and they were shooting us, so we were trying to advance, and we didn't know it at the time, but they had built deep trenches, about 4 or 5 feet deep, and filled them with water. We thought it was just a little water along the top, so we tried to jump and couldn't jump, and then boom, we went down. I remember we were in the water up to here, soaking, dripping with everything. With help from everybody together, we were able to come out of that water, though, soaking wet. And
this is in the winter.
Yes.
So it's freezing.
It was in December, and we continued up, and then we couldn't quite get to that bunker where they were shooting from because it was so heavily protected. So we tried to go around the side, and we went into this little city. Right behind the bunker was a little city. Trying to think of the name. That city. I can't find that book.
We can look for that after.
Okay. We went into this city, and all of a sudden the Germans came all around us. So we ran into this house, and we took refuge in this house, some Germans' family's house, because all the German families, they left the area. They were told to evacuate. So there was no civilians there at all. So we ran into this house, locked the doors, and just got inside, and evidently the German didn't know we were there, because we would stand at the door guard or look out the window, and they were just nonchalantly walking down the street in front of us. I could hear our hearts pounding, because there they were walking down the street right in front of us.
How many were in the house with you?
We were a squad. There was about 12 guys of us was in this house.
It was pretty harrowing, I'd say.
Oh, I tell you, and we would take 2 hours on to stand by the doors to make sure that they wouldn't come into the house. But many times at night, they would come down. We could see them walking in front of us, and they sit on the stoop right in front of our door to grab a cigarette smoke or something, and they were yakking away because they didn't know we were there. But we ate whatever stuff was in the house. The Germans used to, I guess, can a lot of fruits and vegetables and stuff like that. So the cupboards were filled with canned goods. And one of the guys in our squad worked in Kansas City in a slaughterhouse there. And they had cows in the backyard. So he killed a cow, he slaughtered a cow and cut it up, and we had food galore. We were eating like kings, but scared on this side and eating this side, so there was because we couldn't carry enough rations with us.
Sure. Yeah. Now, how long were you in this house for?
We were in this house about almost 2 weeks.
No kidding.
Couldn't get out. We had a radio that they talked back and forth. Our sergeant talked with somebody in the company headquarters, and we were explaining to them. And finally, they said, this was towards the day after Christmas, I think it was, something like that. They said, you have no choice, you've got to get out of there. Whatever you do, get out. Because the Battle of the Bulge had just started, and they needed us up there for the Battle of the Bulge.
Now, did you have to retreat or go forward? Because you're in a house, aren't you, in a town?
Right. We had to get out of the town. We took a chance, and we ran out, and we went back across that big field that we came in, and somehow I can't recall right now, but we joined and met up with our company.
No kidding.
Yeah, we found them, and then we sent us up to the Battle of the Bulge up there near Belgium. And there was snow. It was cold. And that was the last stand that the Germans had made. And,
sure, yeah.
And luckily, after pounding and battling there, they were defeated, and that was the beginning of the end for them. And that was in January of 45. Right. Somewhere in January 40th.
Battle of the Bulge started December 17th, 1944.
That was December 17th?
Yep.
Okay. All right. And after the Battle of the Bulge, it quieted down a little bit, but we were going to go advance more into Germany. But I guess the Americans made an agreement with Russia that Russia would come. We stopped at the Elbe River in Germany. That's as far as we were allowed to go, because the Russians wanted to take over Berlin and come, and they would meet with us at the Elbe River.
Okay.
We could not go. Americans didn't go into Berlin or any of that at that time. This was later on after they peace and that. But the Russians came in, and we met them at the Elbe River, and that had to be somewheres in March, April, something like that.
Now, do you recall the name of the town that you were in, that you were holed up for 2 weeks?
I know the name, and I can't think of it now. It's a real German name. I know we left from Ensdorf, and there was a little town right over there. I know the name, but I can't think of it now.
Now, when you were in contact with your company, did they say they kept telling you just to stay low,
They said when you get an opportunity, get out of there, because they wanted us back, but
you wanted them to come and help you,
or bomb them or do something to help us out. But we were only 12 men or so, and they were more important.
Sure.
We were indispensable,
Small
actually.
Fish in a big, big water.
And we tried several times, but we couldn't, because the German soldiers were always on that street. For some reason, it must have been a main street, or it was a residential area, all homes there, real nice little homes. But we couldn't get out. Then finally, for just a short period of time, we didn't see the German soldiers there hanging around the street. So then we took a chance, and we took off back to the direction we came
I'm
in.
assuming you left at nighttime during the night
Yeah,
under the cover of darkness.
right, yeah, we had to leave then.
When you were in, I meant to ask you, what did you carry for firearms?
I had an M1 rifle, which is basic rifle, and I also carried with me a Thompson's machine gun. That's a little short
Yep.
machine gun. I carried both of those.
And for typical squad, and did you have bandoliers everywhere you went? Or
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
Oh sure, you had a lot of the ammunition.
you were
A lot. We carried a lot of.
engineers. And obviously you saw combat. Did you see when you pulled back after your 2-week holdup in that house? Did you see any more combat, or were you sent directly to the front lines?
Yeah, we were sent from there. We went up to Belgium, Liège, Belgium, there where the Battle of the Bulge was. We went directly north.
Now, did you do similar work there? Cut down trees? This is in the Ardennes forest.
Not so much the trees because there was so much snow there that it was mostly on foot. We couldn't use the.
What were those mules?
They wouldn't put the mules on in the snow. They wouldn't do that. But we continued. We fought. We held a line and advanced a little bit and held the lines, and you could see the German trying to come over, and you just keep pumping bullets at them.
Okay. I know you had commented about your friend being there. Did you make some good friends, and do you still keep in touch with them?
I made some very good friends. In fact, I made one good friend, Olson was his name. He came from Hibbing, Minnesota. I remember. We became very fast, good friends. My brother-in-law was in a jewelry business before he went into the Army, and his family's jewelry business. And I told this Olson guy that, talked about the jewelry. When the war was over and he got back to Hibbing, he sent me a note saying he wants to get engaged. He wants an engagement ring. Can I help him do anything about it? Through my brother-in-law, I says, sure, I'll get him. So I said, it was $500. He bought a diamond ring then.
That's a lot of money.
$500. And I said, all right, send me a check and we'll get you the. He sent me a check without the diamond, without anything. But we sent him the diamond ring. And I heard from him for a while and then just lost contact. We did have, the 95th Division every year they had a reunion.
Sure.
Mostly in the West and Midwest, because that's where the majority of the guys came from. I went to one of them they had in New York City, but this many years ago, and they have a newsletter that goes out, and I get that periodically. Same thing with my 320th Engineer outfit. They have reunions every year. I've never gone to them because, again, they're in September, and it's way out west someplace, and I felt that if I take a vacation, I wanted to take a vacation. But I maybe should have gone rather, but I didn't go to any of them. But over the years, from the letters, so many guys have passed away. Sure. And are dwindling. And now they're debating whether they even enough people to go to a reunion for the division. Although the 320 engineers that I was, they're still hanging in there, and they have a reunion every year. But like I say, it's Kentucky or Indiana or Michigan, and
not New Haven.
No way.
Yeah.
They probably wouldn't come to New Haven for the same reason I didn't want to go out west.
Yeah. Now, when you were in, how did you keep in touch with your family? Through email?
Oh, yes, I would write.
Yeah.
I would write my family. I would write to my my wife at that, I got married, as a matter of fact, I was in Indiantown Gap. She wanted to get married, and before I went overseas, so I said, okay, set a date, and whatever it is, we'll get married. I'll get a pass, and we'll get married. And she said March 3rd, is it, or March 4th, was it? She said for the wedding date. So her parents rented the hall, and everything was set up. And then my 3-day pass to leave on a weekend was canceled. But I was able to get one the week before.
Okay.
Because I got an invitation in the mail to go to my wedding.
Yeah, somebody invited you to.
Yeah.
That's nice.
Okay, she denies it, but I got the invitation, and I wrote her back. I'm sorry, I can't make March 4th, but I can make February 27th weekend in 1944. So she wouldn't take no for an answer, so she made arrangements. Her parents made arrangements, so I came in on a Friday night, and Sunday we got married, and Sunday night we went to New York for our honeymoon. The Hotel Abbey we stayed at. It's not there anymore. But the Hotel Abbey we stayed at, Sunday night. Monday morning, I had to go back. She went to Philadelphia because she had a cousin there. She didn't want to come home on a honeymoon, didn't want to come home the next day. So she went to Philadelphia, and I went to Indiantown Gap, Pennsylvania for a while. And after a short while, after we married, she came out to Indiantown Gap, and she stayed there. Rented a little, which outside of a camp, they had these little one-room little shacks.
Yeah.
One-room little shack, no bathroom, just a sink and a shower. If you wanted a bathroom, you had to go to the gas station, and the woman that ran the gas station had a house there, and you could use her bathroom. And it was really primitive.
Now, did you know that she was coming from Philadelphia? Did you have any idea?
Yes, because I made arrangements for the. And some nights I was able to get a pass to leave, and a lot of nights I was not able to get out at all. We did go. I did go. We had no money then. Well, I was 19, 20, and she was a year younger than I at the time. Had no money, but we'd walk at night. We just to be together. I guess we'd walk up and down that highway, because the highway which led into the camp, right outside, had these little houses where she would stay at that time. She'd get a job she worked at Fannie Farmer Candy. They had a little Fannie Farmer Candy in Harrisburg. No, not Harris. In Harrisburg, Pennsylvania. She worked there for a little while, and was good because she didn't have enough money to buy a lot of food, so she ate the candy.
Huh?
Put on a little weight, but she ate the candy.
Did you meet? Was your wife a high school sweetheart?
No,
No.
because I was born and raised in Springfield, Massachusetts.
Yeah. Okay.
When I graduated from high school, and before college, I had a little job working weekends in a shoe department of a department store. And that summer, my brother-in-law, the jeweler guy, they had a house in Woodmont, Connecticut here, which is right on the shore, right on the Long Island shore.
Okay.
And it was a place where if you wanted to get away for the summer, they rented cottages, they had hotels there, whatever it is. So I went down I took a week's vacation to go down and stay there. And one day on the beach, she's sitting there and with her girlfriends, and I go down there, and one thing led to another, and she started flirting. She said no, but I threw little pebbles. I was all alone there, and she was with a bunch of girls, and that's how we met.
That's great.
And from then on, I must have swept her off her feet, because she was okay.
Getting back to to your time overseas, how was your food when you were over there? I know you had a slaughtered cow, must have been.
Well, that was that short period of time.
Sure, but like regular army chow.
But other than that, there was cans of
Sea rations.
tuna, sea ration, cheese, hard cheese or crackers. Yeah.
Did you get hot meals when you were in combat?
On occasion.
Okay.
On occasion, we would come back to the company where they had the kitchen set up, and we get hot meals. Otherwise, we were always out with our ration. We would come back, pick up enough rations, and
Were you allowed to start fires wherever you were at, or at nighttime?
no, because they would be seen by the enemy. Yeah. I remember a little off-color thing here. It was cold. We had that heavy jacket, and I would take my sea ration because they were in boxes just a little bigger than this and about 2 inches thick.
Yeah.
And I put them in my jacket.
Yeah.
Okay, and I stuffed them in because you don't know whether you'd be gone a day or 2 or 3. So everybody would put it in their jacket. And it's an embarrassing thing to tell you, but we were walking through the woods, and all of a sudden I had to go to the bathroom. And there's no bathrooms there, nothing. So just stop, squatted down, do what I had to do, and squatted down. And then when I got up, I left, and all of a sudden, my sea rations are gone. Wow. So I turned around, I went all the way back to where I was, and I see by sitting down like this, they popped out. And all my ration, all my food was laying on the ground right there. So I had to pick them all up, put them back. And then that's how we would feed ourselves with the...
Did you ever run out of supplies or have a lack of supplies? Like winter clothing, did you ever incur any problems?
Oh, the same thing all the time.
Yeah.
Yeah. There would be days you wouldn't change your clothes because you're out in the field there.
Sure.
Oh, yeah.
Socks, did you ever have any issues with socks?
Socks. I don't remember. I think we carried just a pair of socks in our backpack that we had on our back. But you didn't change them too often when you were out on the field like that.
Now, did you have any superstitions or anything you did for good luck? Or were you only, a lot of soldiers have?
There was one time in this little German city where this friend of mine had his head blown off of him. We were running between, we were running between the houses, and they were shooting, and you could see the bullets hitting the house, but we had to run to get out of it. And as I'm running, I look down, I see something shiny on the ground. And as I bent down to pick it up, I felt this bullet go right over my head and into the wall. But fortunately, I bent down to pick this stupid thing up. And it was a silver chain that would wear around your wrist. So I put it on and I wore it. In fact, I still have it upstairs. I have that little silver chain. It probably saved my life that time.
Absolutely.
Yeah, I still have that. Well, I don't think it's real silver because it's starting to tarnish a little bit.
Still, I'd say that's something to hold on to. Did you get any liberty when you were over in France or Germany?
No. There was one time, just one time they gave us it was our holiday, Rosh Hashanah, and they gave us a pass for 2 days. I can't recall where we went to have services, but all the Jewish guys came to this one spot. It was in the wilderness, and by a certain tree, we met there, and that's where they conducted services for that day. And but other than that, we didn't get any time off. It was not until the end of the war. Because I could speak the language Yiddish, Jewish, okay, which is very similar to German, the language, very similar. Because I could understand German very well because, like I say, and when we were ready to come back to the United States, after the war was over, they were shipping all the guys back because we were going to Japan. When we finished there, we were going to Japan. We were going to go home for 30 days and then be shipped out to Japan. But while we were waiting for the couple of weeks to take the ship back home, because I could speak the language, and they were interviewing all the German civilians there. We had to take and fill out papers on the history, and one of the big questions were, are you a Nazi? Nobody ever admitted to it. You know, I'd ask hundreds of people who come through, and they had to register. The government, American government, had them register because they wanted to know who was in the area as they were coming back. So we sat in this place here, and they would come up to us, and I'd ask them certain questions. And one of the questions was, "Are you or were you a Nazi?" And you know, it'd be foolish to admit it, even if they were. And they probably were not. Some of them were not, but living under that regime, you just had to go along with it.
When you were, you had mentioned going to service. Did you have fellow soldiers that were Jewish in your company?
No. Not in my company. And I did meet some anti-Semitism. I met.
That's what I'm alluding to.
I met some in my. As a matter of fact, there was this one fella particular. He came from. I think he came from Colorado, if I remember right. And he was constantly picking on me and swearing at me and everything. And I chose to ignore him for a while. But then at night, we used to do guard duty at night, 4 hours on and 4 hours off. Go out to the circumference of where all the boys were bivouacked. And it just so happened that this was in the middle of the night, about 2 o'clock in the morning, that I came up to the post where he was standing. Ed Garvey was his name.
Were you relieving him of duty?
Yes, he was finishing his 4 hours, and I was coming. And he made some kind of a remark to me. In that instant, it just hit me the wrong way, and I just pouted, and I just really let him have it right then and there. And he had a fight there. Finally, he quit that, but I did knock out his two teeth, and he never had those tooth again while we were in the service. But that was the end of his picking on me for being a Jewish guy.
When you were, in the States and actually when you were in Europe, did you hear anything about what was going on in Germany with the Nazis and the death camps?
The Nazis, the death camp. Well, I knew about that before I went over.
You did?
Yes. Because they started that in 42, I think it was in 43, they started with the concentration camps and the gas chambers and all that.
Yeah.
And by the time I got there, I heard about it. The only news we could get, we didn't have a radio, we didn't have it, is they would, there was a little newspaper that they would publish.
Stars and Stripes?
Stars and Stripes, right? And remember Bill Malden would always have a cartoon in there or something but the Stars and Stripes would keep us, they did give us, I don't remember how often, but they did give us that newspaper, and that would tell us, we would find out where we were from that paper and what's going on.
Yeah. Did you run into any, did you go to any camps when you were in Germany? Did you see any?
No, we didn't get into we didn't get that far into Germany. Like I say, the Elbe River is not too far it's in the western part of Germany.
Sure, yeah.
You ever hear the Elbe River?
Yep.
Okay,
yes.
We went up to, and we didn't really go too far past that.
Now, when you did you hear about everything after when you got back to the States? What had happened with the concentration camps?
Oh yeah, that we heard of before. I mean, after the war was over, then we were getting more information. There were radios then, and we had access to radios at the camp, where we were stationed, and we heard.
You had mentioned when you had been helping as an interpreter, and you had asked them if they were Nazis. Would you check their bodies for any SS tattoos or anything?
No.
Like that? No.
I didn't have any physical contact with them.
Okay.
Whether they did that before they got to me or after, I don't know. But I sat behind the desk,
Okay.
and they would just come in and stand in front of me, take 4 or 5 minutes perhaps for the interview, and then that was it.
Now, how long did you do that for?
Oh, I did that for a couple of weeks.
Weeks.
And then we were being shipped back to the United States. Then we came back to the United States to go to Japan, and we landed, I forget where, but we went to Camp Shelby, Mississippi. We were stationed in Camp Shelby, Mississippi, getting ready, training, whatever it is, to go to Japan. And just before we were ready to go, the war in Japan had stopped. And that was a big relief, so
Sure.
that was canceled.
Now, I talked to a prior gentleman, and he said that he had accrued enough points where he didn't have to go to Japan. Were there guys in your unit or your company? Did you have enough points where that wasn't, or that didn't matter?
The points were according to the amount of time you spent in the Army plus your age. And I think 85 was a point. If you had accumulated 85, you were then have to go. But I don't think we had a lot of were young fellows like me. We had a few older men, older. They seemed old. They're probably in the 30s, 40s maybe. For whatever reason, they were in the group with us too. And but the points we didn't have, it wasn't a concern because we weren't old enough, like I said, and we didn't have the time in the service
Okay.
to accumulate enough points to be able to get out.
What did you think of your fellow soldiers and the officers in command when you were in Europe?
In general, I had pretty good. There were 2 officers that I had. Lieutenant Muxo was his name. He was terrible. He was an anti-Semite too. He was really after me. And there was this other Kendrick, Lieutenant Kendrick. When we were ready to, and because of me Jewish, they really gave me always the worst part of the deals, wherever it was to do what, the worst part I got, okay? There was this friend of mine that I met in the Army, Mitch Olster was his name. And he came from Webster, Massachusetts, where my brother-in-law lived. So he knew this guy, Olster, and he was a real soldier. Excuse me. He was in the National Guard, and then he was in the an Army. He was first sergeant. He'd do something wrong, they bust him down to a private. But he was so good that they would go back to sergeant. And then he would be a tech sergeant, and he was a platoon sergeant. He was a real soldier, and I got to be very friendly with him. And when there was a mission to go out on, he says, "I'll go." He says, because I'm not going to go home. He says, I'll never get to go home. So I'll go on the mission. And these volunteers, you, Lee, you'll come. I would go with them all these. He'd pick me and a few other guys because he was a friend of mine. I got to be friendly with him, so I went with him. But he would volunteer, usually ask that you say, you're going to go on this mission, whatever, whatever it is, you go. He would say, I'll go, volunteer right up front. I'll go, and I need 2 or 3 guys for whatever it was for. You'd take me and another 2 or 3 guys, and we'd go out, do whatever, and we'd come back. After the war was over, while I was doing this interviewing, they were out in the minefield, digging for mines to dig out the mines to take them out. And, they take the bayonet and stick it into the ground, and they would see if the mine was there, then they would dig it out and deactivate it and get rid of it. He hit a live mine and he got killed. He had that intuition. And he was a married man, he had children. He was probably 12 years older than me. I was 20, 21, and he was maybe in his early or middle 30s, probably. But he hit a mine, they told me, and he body just all over the place.
Sure. When you wrote, did you write every day to your wife and your mom, or
I wrote frequently at night to my wife, the email, they would call it. But from what I understand, when she got it, half of it was cut out or blacked out or whatever, really censored. And all she goes is a sheet with a couple words and a black line. Because I didn't think I was really telling any information because they didn't want us to tell where we were. That's the main purpose of it. I didn't think I was saying too much, but she kept the letters. I have some, in fact, I still have some in my files here, that she would get and would be all blacked out, or sometimes they cut it out and they send the email. I would write it on a record page and then they would copy it into a, you've seen these emails,
yes.
Okay?
Yep.
They would copy it in. Yeah, I would write to her and I would write to my parents, to them.
How often would you get mail?
Depending upon when we'd come back to our camp, our base camp.
How long was the delay from the United States to Europe? A couple weeks, months?
I don't think it was that long. I know my wife sent me some food sometimes. Her mother made these little cookies that were delicious cookies and never got stale though. Sweet sugar type cookies. And she would send a salami in there.
Of course, that stays for a while.
Yeah, and things like that she would ship to me, and I would get them. I don't remember how long it would be because everything was opened up by the time I got it. I'm lucky I got it because somehow it gets lost in the shuffle that things do. But I would get that for the longest while.
Now, I didn't ask you this. Were you ever injured? Did you ever get hurt?
I was at one time, some shrapnel blew up and it caught me in the arm here, just a little nick, but nothing serious.
You had mostly dealt with small arms, machine gun, not shelling. Did you do?
From a mine or a shell or something, it blew up and the little steel thing just.
Right. No, but what I'm asking is, for the most time when you're over there, you dealt with machine guns and not artillery.
Right.
Okay.
I wasn't in artillery. It was machine guns and handguns and.
Right. Okay. Can you do you recall the day that you found out that the war was over?
Yes. I remember. I don't remember what day it was, but I remember hearing about that, and we were, of course, way overjoyed that finally, that burden with that scary feeling of going out all the time was over. So that was a relief.
You were in Germany when that happened.
Yes.
Yeah. What did you? Is that when you were brought on to interpret right after that?
Yes.
Okay.
Well, it took a little time till they got organized and knowing what they wanted to do and so it was a matter of time before I got that. So and then they kept us busy cleaning up guns and in the minefields and the big dump piles where they would stack all these boxes of ammunition and all that. They kept us busy doing all that kind of work. And then I went into this interview part.
Did you, were you in Mississippi when you found out that the war in Japan was over?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
What did you think? Did you hear about the atomic bomb or the super bomb?
Yes, we heard that.
Yeah.
We heard that. And
go ahead. I'm sorry.
And we were, of course, overjoyed the fact that we didn't have to go to Japan. We felt we shouldn't have gone anyway because we did our tour through Europe already, so why do we have to go there? Yeah. But I know there was a big to-do with the families of our division, with the senators and all. They really wrote letters and they called them not to send us over. I remember hearing something about a big campaign put on not to ship us there, but they needed soldiers there.
Sure. Well, was your brother, he was in the Navy, was he sent to the Pacific?
He was on a subtender, and he was in the Pacific, but he wasn't in the combat zone because he was, like I say, a subtender. They would come to where he was in a safe enough area so they could service and fuel him and whatever it is.
Yeah. Do you recall when you out processed, when you discharged? Can you talk about that?
When I was discharged, when the war was over in and I was in Mississippi, they gave us a pass afterwards for a short while, several week pass to come home. I came home, then I had to report back to, like, I can't recall where I had to go back after that. And whatever we did, it was up until December, the end of December, when they finally discharged us to.
Did you out process at Fort Devens as well?
No, not at Fort Devens. I think from Camp Shelby, Mississippi, we processed out.
So you were there and like everything was taken care of right there.
Yeah.
Were you sent by train back to Springfield? Where was your wife at the time?
She was in New Haven, right here in this city.
Okay.
She came from New Haven. She was born and raised here.
Okay. Did you join any veterans organization?
Yes, I was a member of the Jewish War Vets. I still am a member. I'm a member of the Veterans of Foreign War. I'm a member of the American Legion. Is it? And all of the Veterans Association. I do belong to them. I felt I should support them, and I belong to all of them.
When you got out of the war, what line of work did you go into?
When I went out of the war, I was married, and for some reason I felt I had to support a wife. So I went to work. Instead of going back to college, which I should have done, but I'm not sorry now, but I went into the shoe business. I was a salesman in a shoe store, big shoe store. And I worked there for several years until I became manager of the place, and until 1966, when I left the shoe business. And then shortly thereafter, I went into the insurance business. And I went to work for insurance, and I spent the rest of my career in insurance.
Great. You had mentioned earlier that you had a diary. Did you write every day in your diary?
Yes, well, as often as I could.
Yeah.
I kept a diary in this country because I couldn't keep it overseas. But in this country, I had a diary that I wrote where I was each and every day, different places, what I did. And it was a pretty good sized diary.
So you recalled all from memory when you got back to the States? Or did you write any notes when you were over in Europe?
No, they told us that we could not make notes of diary. This reminds me, while we were there in combat, there was a soldier who was killed, and he had a gun, and I took the gun off of him, and I kept the gun with me. And I carried it, a Luger.
Sure.
Okay. I had that with me in my duffel bag. I kept that for quite a while. And then when we were ready to come home, they said, you got to declare all weapons, all guns, whatever you got. And I said to myself, what am I going to do with a gun if I take it home? So I gave the gun to a friend of mine I was with, and he was glad to have it. He took it home with him. He declared it. In fact, I have here, in a case here, in Germany, where there, off a dead soldier we killed, he had these binoculars. So I took the binoculars off him, and I kept it, and I still have it in the case of German binoculars. I kept them all these years.
What did you? in hindsight of your military service, were you glad you went in? Did you have any?
Yeah, it was an adventure. After I was finished and the scary part and the shooting and all that, it was all over. I looked back, I thought it was like an adventure. I looked at it, I was lucky that I came home. I really wasn't injured and nothing at all like that. And I said, gee, that's an adventure. Just went through this part of my life, and I came out alive and home and healthy and all. And it was an experience that I look back. I didn't mind it. I didn't want it at that time because I was married and this and that. But I look back at it. It was an adventure.
Now, do you have anything else you'd like to add? Any particular humorous, funny stories? Anything?
Oh man, how you doing? I have.
I want you to.
Oh.
We can look at it.
Okay. I have a telegram that I sent that I when I arrived someplace, I sent it to my mother. A telegram saying I arrived okay because I know they were concerned. I remember when we left Springfield by train to go to Fort Devens. And I was going in to be processed in all Fort Devens. I was sitting in a train, and my mother and we went to the induction center where they swore us in, and then from there, the whole bunch of us guys, we had to walk to the railroad station. And we walked down the middle of the street, and everybody standing on the side, cheering us up and all. And my mother and my sister walked right along with us up the street. And then when I got on the train and leaving, the windows were open in the train, and they walked the whole part of the railroad station to the end of the plank, where they couldn't walk anymore because the train was picking up speed. And I was out the window, and they were waving goodbye and kissing and all that, Yeah.
What medals were you awarded for your time?
I had the rifle marksmanship, the ETO, the Battle of the Bulge, all the campaigns that we were in at the time. They issued medal certificates or whatever it is, and I had them.
Okay, is there anything else you'd like to add?
We were, when the war was over, they were breaking up our army outfit, and they were cutting back or whatever it is, and they were taking the moving guys around or whatever it is, and they were taking, and the guys that came back and like us, they were gonna, before we were discharged, they were gonna make us all sergeants, give us a title and a job title that would make us a sergeant. And the order was coming down, but all of a sudden they stopped it because they said, let's disband and get out of here. So I never got beyond that.
So in the beginning, you could have become a second lieutenant. That never came to be.
Yeah.
And at the end, you could have become a sergeant.
And that never came to be.
I'm sorry to hear that. Well, I guess that does about it. I would like to thank you for your service, and I guess this concludes our interview. Thank you.
You're welcome.